Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm sharing the 13 days of Craftoween day 6. So the Craftoween calendar is an advent calendar for Halloween. There's 13 different days and each one contains a Halloween themed die set. So they come in little folders in little pouches so you don't see what is in them until you open it up. So today we have an adorable little witch skeleton holding a broom and a cauldron. Now I thought it'd be fun if my skeleton glowed in the dark. So I pulled out my grit paste glow, and I have a piece of Hammermill cardstock here and a palette knife, and I'm just smearing a bit onto the cardstock. It doesn't need to be completely covered. I just need enough of an area for the dies that I plan on using. I'm trying to do it a thin coat. I end up doing it thicker than it really needs to be, and I have a little bit of trouble die cutting through it, but I still manage. So for this, the thinner, the better. But because it's a thicker paste, like I said, it's a little bit harder to get it super, super thin. Now, if you've missed day 1 to 5 of the 13 days of Craftoween, I have them all in the same playlist, so you can check them out there. And every day for 13 days, I'll be sharing a day. So this is after the paste has dried, and you can see how when you turn your lights off, it glows. Now I'm filming during the day, so it's not completely dark in my room, but it's dark enough that you can see that the paste does glow. So I have the 3 dies here that I'm going to use. The arm die, there's only one arm die in the set. You need to cut that twice. And I am placing them face down on my cardstock. However, it doesn't cut all the way through because my paste is thicker than I intended it for it to be, or it really needed to be. So I do tape my dies back on, flip it over so the die side is facing up. There's more pressure from the top on a die cutting machine. So if you have trouble die cutting, that's one of the easiest ways to fix it, is to turn your sandwich over so that the die is facing up. The other thing is my cutting plate is super well used. You can take a look at it and you can tell it has been very, 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 very well loved, but it still works. It still has life to it. So I just keep using it until it cracks or it's too buckled that I can't use it. I just keep using them. So like I said, the first time I went through, it didn't go all the way through. So I relined up my die cuts, and it's really easy to do because we already have the groove from the first pass through. So it's really easy to, move those dies in place, and you can lock it right into place. You know exactly when it's in the right spot because, like I said, it almost really locks in there. I'm using some Best Ever Craft tape to hold those pieces in place, and then I'm flipping my sandwich over. So I have my plate that I usually have on the top. I've changed that so it's on the bottom. Turn my paper over so the die part, the blade part of the die is facing up, and then my well-used, well-loved plate on top. And I do go through and then I go back again just to do it a couple times to make sure that it goes farther through than it did before. And like I said, it doesn't go all the way through because my paste ends up being quite thick, but it goes a lot further and it makes it a lot easier to pull those pieces out. So if you do your paste thinner than I did, you're going to have a little bit easier of a time with it. So I pull them out of my cardstock here, and I did make sure when I did the paste that I have some extra. So if by chance in the next days there are other things that I think would be fun to do with glow in the dark cardstock, I have some that all ready to go that I can die cut out of. So after doing the first pass through, I'm going to die cut that arm a second time. There's space right beside the first one. And this time I'm not even going to try the other way. I'm going to do it with the blade facing up and pass it through. The arm itself is a lot easier because it's a fairly simple shape. The hardest one was the skull face because of all the detail in the skull for the eyes and the nose and the mouth. But that's okay. So we pull that one out. I'll use my die pick just to take it out of the die there. And then I need to take those eyes as well as the nose and whatnot out of the skull face die cut. Now, this piece here is going to be visible. So we have a piece of black that gets glued underneath it. I am pushing those pieces out from the top, the part that is visible. I will tell you right now, I did rip cardstock off the back as I was pulling them out because it didn't cut all the way through, but that's totally okay. We're not going to see the back part. It's going to have the black piece glued to it, so it's not going to be visible. As long as we don't change anything from the top, it's no big deal. So just be aware that if you haven't die cut all the way through, this might be a little bit more challenging than just poking it out, but it does come out. If by chance I had ripped something, I would just re-die cut it. It's not that big a deal. So with everything taken out of my dies and already die cut or finished die cutting, I can start gluing things together. So I'm going to start with that skull and glue this black piece behind it. So that black piece is just intended to go behind the skull to cover the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. And then each of the arms, which I cut twice, and the body also have black pieces that get glued in front of my glow-in-the-dark pieces. Now, if you don't have grit paste glow or something that glows in the dark, you could just use this with white cardstock. That would totally work. Ranger, I believe, sells embossing powder that is glow in the dark. You could even use a Versamark pad with that glow in the dark embossing powder and emboss the glow in the dark powder on these pieces to get a very similar look. The only difference is the grit paste glow has a gritty, sandy texture to it. The glossy or the embossing powder would have a glossy finish to it, because most embossing powders do have a shiny or a glossy finish to it. So as I'm gluing these pieces together, I'm just using some Barely Art glue. I have it in a fine line bottle. That makes it really easy for gluing fine die cuts together, as well as gluing larger pieces like the layers on my cards together. I have a large acrylic block here that I use to put things, or to put on top of things as they're drying. First of all, it keeps everything nice and flat, means that I don't have to hold it while it's drying. Secondly, I can see right through it. So if something shifts as I push it underneath there, I know that it has done that and I can correct that. While I glued my skeleton pieces first, because of that grit paste glow, it's going to take just a little bit longer to dry because it's not porous cardstock. So while waiting for those to set, I can glue my other die cuts together. So for the witch hat, I've die cut it out of Raven cardstock. I have a piece of violet cardstock that I used for the little band. For my broom, I have some truffle cardstock that I used for the handle. I have some beeswax cardstock for the broom part, and then the band around it is just done out of that same Raven cardstock. For the cauldron, I die cut that out of some mirror cardstock from the Onyx Treasured Cardstock pack, so it has a nice gloss to it. This skeleton has little cheek pieces that I die cut out of some anchor cardstock. I didn't want them stark black. The package illustration has them done in pink, and to me that was just a little bit, it's not the look that I was going for. So I thought the anchor cardstock was perfect for that. There's also two tiny little dots that go on the pelvis bone, and I am just putting dots of glue for those pieces and then using my jewel picker to pick up those tiny pieces and place them in the glue. For pieces that tiny, this is the easiest way to do it. And if by chance you don't get them positioned perfectly, you can use your die pick to move those pieces around in the glue. I have a little tiny piece of Peridot cardstock, and most of these pieces for these dies in the Craftoween calendar are fairly tiny or fairly small, so they're really good for using up cardstock scraps. So I have the Peridot cardstock that is used to die cut the whatever is in the cauldron. I'm thinking it's like green slime or something, because I chose to do it in that green color. And then I can wait for those for a few minutes to dry. Then I'm ready to glue all of those pieces together. So I'm using that same glue, gluing all of the different pieces together. And the nice thing about using a liquid glue is you've got some wiggle room to it. So you can make sure you have your pieces positioned exactly how you want to. And by having these pieces or the glue in the fine line bottle, even like those dots for the cheeks as well as the pelvis bone were really easy to glue together, and I didn't have to grab a different glue thing. So I use my fine line bottle with my glue all the time. It's convenient, it's handy. I have it ready to go. So the one thing is I didn't wait long enough for my Peridot cardstock to dry on the mirror cardstock of my cauldron. So you can see that it shifted as I was putting those in place. Not a big deal. It's really easy to move back, and then I just wiped it quickly to remove any glue residue. But because that mirror cardstock is coated, it takes a little bit longer for it to dry because the card or the glue is only absorbing into one cardstock. So the other one, the mirror cardstock, it just takes a little bit longer for it to dry there. While waiting for everything to dry, I am going to take my background here and I'm just doing some super simple blending on the back of this piece. This is cut to 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches, and then I'm going to have a black matte that is cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. For the bottom color here, I'm using some Twisted Citron. And then I have some Hickory Smoke for the center part, and I'll use some Villainous Potion for the top part. So I have 3 different colors on the background. That Hickory Smoke, the main purpose of it is to kind of put a barrier between that Twisted Citron and the Villainous Potion, because they're not right next to each other on the color wheel. I didn't really want them to turn to mud because the green is quite yellowy. I didn't want it to turn into a brown, so I thought the Hickory Smoke was a good buffer, as well as the fact that it worked well with the black cardstock that I've used. I'm going to stamp my sentiment on the front of the card before I assemble it. And this is the stamp set that comes with that 13 days of Craftoween calendar. It coordinates perfectly with all of these die sets. I have been mostly using the stamp set that they've had in their sample piece because it just seems to be the one that works best for that particular die. Obviously, you can change it up easily if you want to. I'm using some black Memento ink to stamp that in place. If you have black distress ink or any other black ink, that would absolutely work. This is just one that I had on my desk that was quick and easy to grab. Once I've stamped that, I just quickly clean off my stamp with a damp microfiber cloth, and we're ready to start assembling the card. Now, I totally messed up filming assembling the card, so I've got gluing down my mat here, and like I said before, this is trimmed to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And then off screen, I glue down my ink blended and stamped background, as well as my die cut. To add just a touch of extra texture to it, I'm going to take this Glossy Accents and put it on that Peridot cardstock of the green slime that's coming out of the cauldron. It's just going to give it some gloss as well as some dimension. If by chance when you're using Glossy Accents and you get some that goes off of your die cut like I just did here, I just use my die pick to fix that. While it's wet, it's super easy to fix. I just use the tip of my die cut gently. I don't want to scratch the cardstock underneath. It picks up that Glossy Accents, and I just keep doing that until it's got as much of it off as I need or want, or it's cleaned that up. And then I can use my finger to just wipe off any that like residue that might be on that die cut there. So here is the finished card. Again, just like the rest of these Craftoween cards, they're really, really simple in design. They're great for beginners, but with that glow, grit paste glow on that cardstock, it's very fun to have a unique surprise element. And it's one of those elements that I don't think anyone would really know it's there until someone turned the light off. So here it is with the light on, and then we can turn the light off. Now again, I'm doing this in the daylight, so my camera adjusts quite quickly. You can see that it's glowing, but it's not as bright as if my room would be completely black, but it's still just a fun surprise. And you could easily put just a little post-it note or a little pencil note on the inside of the card telling your recipient to check out the card when the lights are off. But it's just, again, a fun surprise element on there. Thank you so much for joining me for the 13 days of Craftoween Day 6. I will be back tomorrow to share Day 7.